Alright everybody, my name's Steve Soloff. Welcome back to InformTheVoteNJ.com for the final report of the 2024 election season. I just want to remind everybody before I get started that I'm just a normal guy who got a sample ballot in the mail last year and decided to look everybody up before I cast a vote, because I wanted to make sure I was making an informed vote. And it took a very long time to go down that rabbit hole, and so I thought I'd start sharing that to other people. And throughout the course of this past year, I've tried to stay as objective and fair as possible, but ultimately I'm going to have my own opinions and some biases, and I'm going to give myself an opportunity to not be necessarily biased, but to give my honest opinion, at least to a certain extent, so that I can speak to you in a straightforward manner. It's one thing to just look at facts and figures. It's another thing to have a first-hand experience, showing up to different events, talking to people, and having the totality of my perception go through my brain, and then just kind of give it to you straight. So, that being said, I would like to say that there has been a fair amount of participation from candidates on both sides of the aisle and the independent candidates, but it's still my opinion that more participation is needed going forward, and preferably from some sort of county-endorsed process. You know, it's one thing to be able to go up to people and ask for information and have them, you know, be very supportive or cooperative and volunteer the information. But sometimes, you know, you get people on both sides of the aisle questioning your motives and saying things like, is somebody paying you to do this stuff, or blah, blah, blah. It's just like, no, I'm just a guy who wants to know what's going on. So, if the county endorsed something, it wouldn't even have to be from me. It could be some sort of other organization, a more polished professional process, whatever it is. But if the county endorsed something, then it would be like, oh, okay, everybody knows this is the organization that is asking the questions, and so we don't have to know if it's like influenced or micromanaged or whatever. Hopefully we would have a more straightforward, like, let's just share the information type of process. And also, if you don't like my opinions or whatever, there's plenty of more objective information on the website. And you also have your own chance to show up to events and go down the rabbit hole and do your own research. So this is just my way of getting the conversation at the local level started a little bit better, getting people in the county aware of local politics a little bit better, and then hopefully we can take it from there. And also, this is probably going to be quite a long video because I'm going through a bunch of different elections. So what I'm going to do is put timestamps in the description of the video so that you can scroll through and get to the part that is interesting to you. So to start, I'm not even going to touch the Trump versus Harris election. There's endless information about that online, and you don't need some random guy from Cumberland County telling you what those connections are. Possibly in the future, if I keep doing this and can get more detailed information at the local level, then maybe some connections to presidential races would make sense. But I just don't really feel comfortable doing that right now. So we're going to start with the U.S. Senate race. There's one seat open for New Jersey, and there's actually 5 candidates, I believe, in that race. There's obviously the Republican and Democrat candidates, but there's also a couple of independents, namely Patricia Mooneyham, who's like an independent, I believe, and Christina Khalil, which is the Green Party candidate. And in my opinion, they do have decent websites with clearly laid out agendas. And I was able to speak to Patricia Mooneyham at Deerfield Day, and I saw an interview with her online. She seems very well spoken, very knowledgeable, and similar things from Christina Khalil. And so it would have been nice to know that there was a more formalized process to let those two women make their cases at the debates or some sort of formalized town hall. You know, it's just my personal opinion that everybody who's taken the time to collect the signatures and get on the ballot and, you know, at least appears somewhat informed and presenting a good case should get some time to present their case. So hopefully in the future we can work towards that at the New Jersey state level. But given that we're still in this place where the two major party candidates are the most likely to win, I'm going to focus on them. So, on the Democrat side, we have Andy Kim, and he's a career politician, and if I had to pick one of several candidates who clearly has their agenda well laid out with plenty of information on their website, it's Andy Kim. So I want to give kudos to that, and anybody who's watching along, hopefully that standard can be reached across the board. That way people like myself and hopefully you that are actually interested can easily access that stuff. Now, to counter that a bit, a lot of candidates, not just in this race but across the board, they focus on prior agendas or prior accomplishments, prior experience. When I'm looking at it, I want to know what's your agenda moving forward and what are you specifically going to do and how are you going to do it. That way I can make a decision not only based on prior experience, prior accomplishments, but what do we need right now and what are we specifically going to do moving forward. Now, if I'm looking fairly at Andy Kim, at least in my opinion, he is very much in line with the Biden-Harris administration, voting apparently 100% of the time with them. So if you're generally left-leaning and you're happy with the Biden-Harris administration, I totally get why you would vote for him. But in contrast, Curtis Bashaw, the Republican candidate, is an outsider, not a career politician, so he's going to pitch that this is a fresh look, not a career politician, new ways of thinking. And to go along with that, he's also a married gay man who's pro-choice. So if you're more of a moderate, an independent, or obviously right-leaning, you probably want to give Curtis Bashaw a fair look over. Because here in New Jersey, we've had Democrat senators for, 40 years or something like that? And so if you just basically believe in fair checks and balances and getting a fresh look in there, I'm not saying you have to vote for Curtis Bashaw. I'm just recommending that he's worth a look. So you've got all that, and he's also said that he'll stand up to his own party. Like, when he was pressed about being a pro-choice Republican during the debates, he really stood his ground and said, I will stand up to my party when I don't agree with them. Now, I agree with them a lot, but not all the time. And that is a clear distinction, at least in my mind, from somebody like Andy Kim, who has allegedly voted with his party 100% of the time. So, that's the U.S. Senate race. Then we're going to move on to the House of Representatives. Again, there's the Green Party candidate in this race from Thomas Conovo. Now, I'm not going to give him as much of an endorsement of needing a fair shot because other than seeing lawn signs around town, I haven't seen him at events or have anything advertised. It's just his presence wasn't that good, in my opinion. I mean, fair enough. If he's on the ballot, perhaps he should have been at the debate. But I just don't see it as a super strong connection there. Now, we can move on to Van Drew, and people who pay attention to local politics a lot obviously know who Van Drew is. But for those of you who might not know, he's a career politician, or somebody who at least kind of comes across as a career politician. He used to be a Democrat, and he flipped to being a Republican, and he's a strong supporter of Donald Trump. And so I get, if you are very left-leaning, you might not like Van Drew. And I understand that argument. But with all of his strength, it's my opinion that, I mean, like, strength as in a career politician. You might not agree with him, but, you know, he's going to be a strong candidate. Salerno, on the other hand, is sort of coming out of left field. And I looked over his website, and like I said previously, I don't want just a general outline of what your agenda and policy positions are. Like, I want to know the specifics, and I want to know how you're going to try to accomplish them. And that's especially important when you're going against a strong career politician like Van Drew. So I was actually able to meet up with Salerno at Deerfield Day, and I asked him to clarify his agenda and policy positions, and he basically told me that he doesn't have a specific agenda or specific policy positions. He's more focused on unifying party politics, as in, you know, being able to bring people together. And then he attacked Van Drew, saying that he has no moral compass. Well, it's a little interesting, having watched the race, coming across the campaign ads and seeing some videos recorded at some of his campaign speeches. He spent a lot of time attacking Van Drew. You know, I don't think it is quite consistent to say you're going to be a unifier and a big portion of your campaign is attacking. So I just don't know if I believe he's going to be a big unifier if he gets elected. And then he went on to say in one of his ads, what was it? He was saying, sorry, I looked over my notes. He basically said that Van Drew had forgotten about South Jersey. Now, I've been paying attention and showing up to a lot of events and meetings over the past year. And so when I first started going down this rabbit hole, there was a big to-do about the Middle Mile work session, or the Middle Mile broadband grant, and there was a work session at Cumberland County College, or RCSJ, whatever you call it now. And sure enough, the guy who forgot about us and went to Washington was standing right there advocating for the Middle Mile broadband grant, which is, you know, at least supposedly going to help people in the county get better internet access. I've also seen Van Drew at multiple Republican breakfasts over the past year. I think at least 3, where I've been able to, like, go up to him, shake his hand, say hi, like, talk to him for a minute or two, blah, 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 blah. Then, personally, my big issue with Cumberland County politics is getting more information out to the public. So I went on his website and did, like, one of those contact forms and wrote him a big long message about trying to get more press coverage in Cumberland County, and he personally called me back. What else? Oh, there's the big to-do right now about the Atlantic City electric bills that have gone through the roof, and you can just go on his website and see that he's on top of addressing that. It's like almost every day I see a post about him trying to get AC Electric to bring their costs down. He's also been on top of the offshore wind thing, whether or not you agree with him. He's obviously been involved with that. And he's also been involved in helping to restore Lake Lenape. So, this general claim that he spends all his time in Washington or currying favor on Fox News and Newsmax or whatever, it's like, I think that was just pulled out of his ass. Maybe I'm missing something, I don't know, but I've seen Van Drew around town at least a handful of times in the past year, and I'm new to it all, so I don't know. And then with the Salerno thing, this relates to local politics in general, but I basically had to track him down at Deerfield Day just to talk to him one time or figure out where he's going to be. And this is a recurring problem because when I talked to Sheriff Faustino last year, I was like, hey, when do you guys have regularly scheduled events where I can show up and ask follow-up questions, blah, blah, blah. And he basically said, we just wing it. We call each other and we just show up. We don't necessarily advertise. And on the Cumberland County, New Jersey Democrats website, you can see no events have been posted since March. And so then when I asked Salerno, when are you going to have events, blah, 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 he said, oh, well, most of our events are at private homes. And so it's difficult getting people from the public to show up. And it's like, okay, I guess that's acceptable. I don't know. So, generally speaking, I'm just not impressed. I understand if people don't like Van Drew for flipping and supporting Trump, blah, 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 but I don't necessarily think Salerno is a strong opponent. So then I'm going to go to county commissioner's race. And my basic theme here is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In other words, I've been showing up to different events and trying to ask questions and be fair to everybody, blah, blah, blah. And I haven't seen any strong case from county Democrats to say that something actually needs to change. That would be the basic argument, right? Or at least some sort of we're significantly different from the incumbent Republicans. So here's why you should consider electing us instead. My general impression is the Republicans have been doing the job, and the few criticisms I've heard have been addressed. So, if I don't hear a very strong case, and I don't necessarily have the opportunity to meet them on a regular basis, because, they don't have events posted on their website, or at least not since March, and their Facebook group is very hit or miss. Sometimes I'll see videos of an event after it already happened, or I'll see a posting about an event a day before, and it's I already have plans. I can't follow you all day every day hoping that you're gonna let me show up to your event and meet somebody. I do have a life. So, and the contrast here as well is the Republicans have a bi-weekly breakfast where you just know it's going to happen. You send your RSVP, you show up, and then you can hear what their messaging is. And if you have questions, you can just go up and ask them to clarify stuff. So the general accessibility isn't there from the Democrats, in my opinion. And the message wasn't totally clear. And then, let's see. Oh, the one thing that I was able to get from Faustino at Deerfield Day, when I asked him to clarify his agenda, he said that the county Democrats, the incumbent Republicans are spending too much on county parks when our budget is tight. Okay, fair enough. So what did I do? I went back to the incumbent Republicans. I asked Commissioner Romero, what's going on with spending money on county parks? And he said, oh, it's totally within budget. Nothing to worry about there. It's like, okay. So I hear something from one side of the aisle, I hear this other thing from the other side of the aisle. It really doesn't sound like a big deal. So unless, again, that case is made a bit more strongly from the Democrats, I don't think I just don't know that it's an issue. Then there was a campaign ad about the South Avenue culvert and how it hasn't been repaired yet. Well, I guess the Republicans saw that ad too, and they put out a press release saying that it's currently being handled. So, I don't know. Projects take time to complete. You know, and again, if there's not a strong case, there's not a strong case. And, you know, at least on my website, I'm aware of, I don't know, maybe 10 issues, such as press coverage. You know, are the Democrats going to do anything about press coverage in the area? The middle mile broadband, is there an update on that? And to be fair, both sides of the aisle could be doing this, but again, the Republicans are the incumbents, and as far as I know, if they're not mishandling any of this, or there's no clear case that the Democrats are going to do a better job about any of this, I'm just going to let it roll. So here are the issues, right? Press coverage, middle mile broadband grant, prior issues at the county jail, the NABAV extension, sewage at Laurel Lake, motorcycles and ATVs, off-road vehicles, what's going on at East Point Lighthouse, tourism enhancements between Cumberland County and Cape May, what's going on with homelessness, and what's going on with crime. These are all issues that could be regularly addressed. I just haven't seen like a clear case. So, again, if you lean left and you just want to vote blue no matter who, I guess you could do that. But for somebody who's like trying to critically analyze the situation and give a fair shake, I just don't think anything is particularly broken. Then we move on to the county clerk race. This is a bit opposite. This is one where I could say, if it appears broken, maybe we should consider fixing it. Now, to be fair, Celeste Riley has a lot of experience. She's a career politician. I met her, spoke with her briefly. She seems like a nice woman. And she's already been doing the job for approximately 10 years. It's her second term. She's running for re-election as a third term. But to be fair, Victoria Loades, current Commissioner Loades, also is a bit of a career politician. Actually, not a bit. She is a career politician. And she's the current commissioner, so she's going to be at least familiar with the roles of the county clerk and probably feels confident that she can do the job. And then she also, I guess through maybe some of my influence being around town, she proposed in a recent Courier Post article that the county needs an aggressive voter education program, which I would agree with. You know, part of my frustration and struggle over the past year is just, okay, I've been yelled at my entire life to go vote and get more involved in local politics and all this kind of stuff. And now that I'm doing it, it's like, well, where's the information? Like, you want me to vote, but like, where's my little pamphlet or like website where I can go down the rabbit hole and find all the relevant information without literally having to watch 100 past county commissioner videos or show up to every school board meeting just to have a decent idea of which way I should be voting. So yeah, I agree with the voter education initiative. Now, to move on to something being potentially broken, there was a big to-do about the ballot design for the election coming up. The county clerk, the office, I guess, to be legally appropriate here. The county clerk's office redesigned the ballot to do an office block. So everybody who was running for president was together. Everybody who was running for county clerk was together. Everybody, county commissioner was together, etc., etc. Which might not sound like a big deal, but that could be confusing to people who've been voting for years, and it could just be confusing, is the point. So, in my opinion, it's like, well, that's the basic function of the job, or one of the basic functions of the job, is to handle the county elections and to not get yourself caught up in lawsuits. And I haven't heard any rebuttal from the current county clerk about... Actually, no, I did hear a small rebuttal on an interview that she did, which was the GOP could have been in the room, I guess, when they were doing the ballot design. But, I mean, again, as an outsider looking in, if you need to be watched to follow the law doing your job, I mean, that's a little concerning. And then there was the issue of general voting information going out to the public, as in, like, what's the election day, where are your polling locations, blah, 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 blah. But her picture and her name was on it, and so it kind of looked like it was doubling as campaign literature. And so I haven't heard any rebuttal about that. So, just generally speaking, if you're left-leaning, and you don't think those two issues were that big of a deal, you still might vote for Celeste Riley. But at the same time, it's like, well, what does party politics even have to do with the county clerk? You know, it's like, why am I even being asked to vote for this if it's basically just an administrative role and you could probably just appoint somebody to do it? Now, I don't have the answer to that question, but if we're going to do party politics, at least to a certain extent, and be asked to vote, it's like, well, I see some problems, and I like Victoria Lode's suggestion of voter education, so, you know, if you're more of a moderate, it's something to consider. Now I'm going to go on to the Millville City Commissioner's race. First, I want to thank all the candidates for participating in this race, because it was one of the more, like, communicative, people showed up for interviews, and thank to Vice Mayor Suey for showing up for an interview. We had phone calls, emails, this kind of stuff. And so generally speaking, my impression is you've just got 4 well-meaning candidates, and so I don't want to participate in necessarily pitting people against each other here. And in a fantasy world, you know, there's 27,000 people in Millville, and if we raised everybody's taxes by $1, you could probably hire all 4 of them, because I did the math, and it would only cost about $1, you know, assuming everybody actually pays their taxes, but that's a whole other ball of wax. So I'm going to start with candidate McQuaid. He was the most communicative. He was sending me text messages back and forth, and he did not only 1, but 2 interviews, like one at the beginning of the general election season, and then one, you know, a couple weeks ago. So there was, like, the initial information, and then the follow-up with all the other information that came in throughout the election season. So I really appreciate that. I think that could be standard across the county for all candidates. And then I really liked his suggestion for a community relations board. A big theme over the past year has been, we need to get people more involved and showing up to meetings year round and all this kind of stuff. And that community relations board idea is setting up a meeting where involving people from the public directly, I think is good, because I've been to county meetings and school board meetings and stuff, and sometimes you could really sit there for an hour and a half and not know what's going on or not be told anything relevant. So I think a directly relevant meeting for the public is good. He also has law enforcement background, and he's the one candidate that's clearly opposed to the sale of retail cannabis. Now, from my perspective, selling retail cannabis in Millville was what I considered a hot topic because it got brought up at a recent meeting, and it was my impression that it was a good way to make money for the city, but it seems as though that might not be the most hot topic. But the point that I'm bringing up with that is, if other things are more important, then it should be clearly communicated and agreed upon so that when somebody like me is trying to get the information, I know what the top topics are, and then I can make sure that my focus is on them. So I'm just going to keep going with this retail cannabis thing and say McQuaid was the one person who clearly said no because of the possible contribution to drug addiction and stuff that's already present in Millville. Now, moving on to candidate Ranello. She is obviously the incumbent, and one thing to know about Millville city politics is their commissioner board, each person has a specific role, and this seat currently is the Parks and Public Spaces role. And so she's already doing that work, and you can see on her social media, she's well documented a bunch of stuff that she's done in that specific spot. So there is a decent argument to just be like, let her continue doing what she's doing. She was also very communicative with us, called on the phone at least a couple times and sent me emails with information and all that kind of stuff. And then so to follow up with the hot topic of retail cannabis sales, she wants to make sure that a more clearly written resolution is presented to her so she's aware of exactly what's going on before she starts approving anything to move forward. Then moving on to Maria Darminio. She's the obvious newcomer in the race, but she was also communicative with us. One thing she prioritizes is transparency. She wants to make sure everybody in the public knows what's going on so that they can vote appropriately. And she was the one candidate who clearly supported the sale of retail cannabis. You can see her logically thought out statement on the issue on the website. And the one thing that kind of comes to mind is Millville needs economic development. And while there were some suggestions here and there, the sale of retail cannabis is the most direct thing on the table, at least to my perception. And so it would help solve some of the other problems, like getting more salary for city employees, getting more police, all this kind of stuff. So, you know, it might not be the 100% top priority topic, but it does seem like a decent issue to be talking about. Now, Carol Kosovoon, she did reach out to us. The communication was a bit brief. Her presence online is a little less, but from talking to people around town, she does seem very well liked, and from her resume, she's very active. And she did have a very unique agenda item, at least from my perspective, which was to leverage the city solicitor to address absentee landlords and vacant properties. And just from chatter around town, that does seem to be a hot topic or a top priority. So she was the one who seemed to most directly address that issue. So following that, we're going to move on to the Lawrence Township Committee. So I want to thank both candidates for reaching out to me during this process. However, I do want to point out that one candidate reached out to me fairly late in election season, which kind of highlights, again, the need for more press coverage, because if there was a more formalized, endorsed process, then the candidates would probably treat it more seriously, I guess is one way to put it, and then give plenty of time for follow-ups. So I apologize to anyone throughout all the elections. If some of this doesn't feel fully covered, it's probably because this is like a grassroots effort, and the information just trickles in as it does. So to start with candidate Milletta, he got a hold of us early, and his main agenda priority was to be able to retain budget surpluses, because normally when the township has extra money, they have to return it to the state. But in his opinion, if he was able to keep it, he'd be able to use it for emergency funding, which does come up from time to time. Also, Milletta is the incumbent with 17 years of experience, and he did point out that his opponent is a younger guy who seems to be gaining traction on social media. And so while the younger guy may have some good ideas, he might not be as effective as pulling them off as somebody who has 17 years of experience. And then his opponent, Charlie Woody, gave us a lot of communication, but again, it came in late. So, sorry to Milletta if you don't have a proper chance to respond. It just kind of is what it is. Woody's main thing is that when he was growing up, he felt a sense of pride throughout the community. Everybody unlocked their doors. They felt safe walking around the streets. But some of that standard has slipped over the years. So to help reinstate that community pride, he wants to do things like come up with spaces for kids to be engaged. So, for example, there's a local senior center in the area, and he wants to use the senior center during after-school hours and bring in volunteers to help put on activities for the kids after school. Then he also wants to look at neighboring districts' plans for their successful skate parks. So then he would bring in a skate park in the area to give something else for the kids to do. And one thing I do want to touch on, I know it's a little bit of a touchy subject, but apparently he had an incident at the at one of the committee meetings, and I do want to at least mention it because I've had my incidents around town, ruffling both sides of the aisle, and so he wants to make sure that the transparency and the welcoming attitude in the area is brought to county government, because the last thing we want to do, especially in these times where all politics is very heated, we don't want to add to that. So he wants to make sure that's accomplished. And I guess I forgot to write it on my paper, but he also definitely wants to modernize the township government, as in he wants to do live stream videos of the county meetings and then post them on either the county website or YouTube. Then he also wants to let constituents submit questions online. So like the posted videos, the live stream videos, and the submitted questions gives constituents an opportunity to participate even if they can't make it to the scheduled meeting. because obviously everybody's got lives, and they can't make it to every meeting all the time. So that's that race. Vineland City Council and Mayor race. So the City Council thing to me is pretty straightforward. Team Finucci is a strong slate with several incumbents, and the only challenger to that is Maya Arroyo. And she did send me a brief email, but she never followed up with anything. So if there's just no strong case on the table, I just vote Team Finucci. I mean, I'm going to cover the mayor race separately, but basically I just don't have sufficient information about Arroyo, so there's just no contest, I guess you could say. To be fair, a couple of the candidates on Team Finucci's did not reach out to me either, but they're part of that, the winning team, so to speak, so it just kind of is what it is. Now, to move on to the mayor race itself, Mayor Finucci was actually the first person to help me bridge the gap from somebody who has no idea what's going on to being involved in the process. Like I said, I got the sample ballot in the mail last year, and it took me 6 weeks of calling people, sending emails, blah, 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 and getting almost no response. But then the mayor picked up the phone and he said, "Oh, you want to come here, you go there, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to help you make some connections, blah, blah, blah." So that's an extra level of communication that I would like to see throughout the county. I'm not here to play partisan politics per se, you know what I mean? I do have my leanings, but I really just wanted access to the information last year so I could make an informed vote. And so I got to thank the mayor for making that happen, or at least starting to make that happen. Also, he's the incumbent for 7 years. He sent me over a lot of information you can see on the website about his agenda, and he's got a lot of positive messaging around town. You can see his ads on TV. He's been doing the thing, and it looks like he just wants to keep doing the thing. Now, former Mayor Romano, on the other hand, he did speak with me on Facebook a little bit, and I've seen some scattered agenda items that he posted on Facebook, but when he communicated with me, he spent most of his time attacking Finucci. And so, fair enough, you're trying to win the race, and you're trying to make yourself different, but I didn't see a clear agenda from him. So it's almost like, well, what's the contest even? And one of his major things was to bring up some dirt about some FBI investigation that's going on, but at the same time, Romano's got his own dirt going on, so that kind of turns into a wash. Maybe if I had heard from him more, I would think it was more of a contest, but it kind of is what it is at this point. So then moving on, I'm going to start doing the school boards, and I'm going to lump together the Bridgeton, Fairfield, and Lawrence Township school boards, because I had very little to no response from any of the candidates. One person, Kristen Figueroa, did get back to me, and you can see her stuff on the website. And then I have indirect information on Demita White-Morris from Bridgeton, but that was from when she was running running for county commissioner, or maybe General Assembly last year. You can check on the website, but basically it's there was no direct information about the school board race. So the general statement is more about formalizing this process so that people do reach out and communicate. And again, the process doesn't have to involve me. Hire somebody from the Atlantic City Press to come out here on a regular basis. I don't know. I don't care. I just want the information to be comprehensive and accessible. That way people can make a choice. So That's pretty much it for those 3 school board races. Moving on to commercial township school board race. So 3 of the 4 candidates reached out. There's 3 seats available. The only person who didn't reach out was Tracy Richardson. So you might be able to just make your decision right there. But again, I'm not from commercial township, so I don't know. Maybe Tracy Richardson's a great person. I just don't know anything about her. The other 3, there's 1 Republican, 1 Independent, and 1 Democrat. So maybe that's another reason to just let that be a fair checks and balance type vote. I don't know. And I also want to address, in a politically correct manner, I guess, without naming names or whatever, somebody sent me some information at the last minute trying to point out something about one of the candidates' past, but it was something from 20 years ago, and the surface level allegation was just not accurate. So, again, I don't want to say that I'm not going to post stuff like that when it comes across my desk, so to speak. It was last minute, like a October surprise thing. I don't have verification on it. And when I cross-checked with the candidate, it didn't seem like it was legit. So I just left it out of there. And again, another argument for let's start the communication early. That way any questions that come up can be thoroughly verified and not rushed at the last minute. So I'm going to start with candidate Tom Forkin. He was very communicative. He gave me a phone call about a month ago. And then, last minute we've been talking on the phone for last updates. He's got a lot of political experience. You can see on his Facebook page, he's got a general conservative ideology. And then he sent me some screenshots about a survey taken at the schools where a lot of students feel that the schools are not clean and not safe. So his priority is to address those kinds of issues. Moving on to Heather Whitaker, she was communicative with us. She wanted to emphasize that she had a value of importance in having kids in the school system. She also wanted to point out that she's the type of person who will challenge the status quo as opposed to just moving along to get along, whatever that phrase is. And she also has lots of relevant experiences you can check out on the website. Again, Tracy Richardson, don't know a thing about her. And then Jessica Driver, she was communicative. She's got a bunch of experience on her website, and one of her top priorities was school safety. And then finally, the Vineland School Board, there's 3 seats open with 5 candidates. The first candidate, Alex Silva, I was not able to find very much information about him online. And just to point out, I did email, write letters, make phone calls to a lot of people. So when I say I'm not able to find something, it's not like I didn't try. So he's got a little bit of presence online, but I just don't know anything about him. Kima Douglas, again, she also did not directly communicate with us, but she does have a decent online presence, and I was able to list out some of her agenda and all that kind of stuff. You can check it on the website. It seems as though school safety is a top priority for her. That's a common theme for everybody. And then she also wants to make sure there's a fair representation of the people's voice in the school. So she wants more community engagement and community involvement. Eugene Medio briefly communicated with us, or with me, with me several times throughout the campaign season, but he didn't do a thorough follow-up. He was going to send me a list of agenda items. I guess he just never really got to it. But based off of what we were able to gather, he's an incumbent with many years of experience. Last year, he was opposed to Policy 5756, which was the parents' rights versus students' privacy issue in the school. That was a big to-do. He wants to do a big overhaul of the discipline policy. And then moving on to Donna Perez, we briefly communicated with her online. She sent me like an email. Seems as though her main thing is that she's got a lot of financial experience, so she's going to be able to help the school board budget properly. And then she also wanted to state that she's going to have a decent sense of how to balance the state mandates and policies versus what happens at the local level. So if you don't always know, or if you're not familiar with how the school system works, sometimes the state will say something, but then you've got to say, well, this just doesn't make sense for us. And so she wants to make sure that level of communication is there. And then Shane Harris got in touch with us a couple of weeks ago. He's got a lot of experience working with the school system, but as a police officer. So he feels as though he's going to be able to bring a strong sense of security to the school system. He wants to address disciplinary methods on a school-by-school basis. So if like a particular school is having a particularly bad behavioral problem, he's going to address it as it comes up. One thing we want to point out is his the way he feels about policy 5756 is he respects parents' rights, but he's going to default to following the law as it's written. And then finally, he wants to address student performance as needed when elected. So if a school is having a particularly bad performance outcome, he's going to investigate those schools individually and address the needs appropriately. So again, that's all that's there. If I missed anything during all of that, again, this is just a general impression. It's sort of like playing the balance of, okay, I'm trying to be a citizen journalist, I'm trying to get objective information, but at the end of the day, we all just have like these general impressions in our head as average citizens. And so hopefully that helps elucidate some of it, but at the end of the day, you really should do your own research. We all should be more involved. And it's a grassroots effort, you know. Maybe it'll grow and be more comprehensive in the future, but as of right now, it kind of is what it is. Thanks for listening.